Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 most overcrowded cities. Doesn't being in a crowd just suck? Catching the subway, getting in the line at the airport, unexpectedly fending yourself off in a mosh pit at a heavy metal gig? Well, we've all been there. And while these moments were among the least pleasant of our lives, at least we had somewhere we could escape to afterwards. But not everyone is so lucky. Some of our fellow humans are stuck living in cities that are like Black Friday at the Magic Unicorn store, except all year round. We're talking about the world's densest cities. Cities with so many humans crammed into them that it's impossible to sneeze without accidentally blowing your neighbor's toupee off. Specifically, we're looking at the cities with the highest number of people per square kilometer in their wider metropolitan area. All of our data comes from the UN Habitat dataset, which you can browse for yourself. There's a link in the description below. Got all of that? Well, great. Then hold on tight as we take a ride through some of the most overcrowded places in the entire world. Number 10. Jakarta, Indonesia. 9,600 people per square kilometer. Overcrowded, crazy, polluted, borderline insane. Well, those are just a few of the words travelers often use to describe Indonesia's bloated capital. Home to 30.2 million people crammed into a relatively tiny area, Jakarta comes from the go big or go home school of urban sprawl. The city exists in a state of near permanent gridlock, with cars clogging the roads morning, noon and night. The infrastructure too is hopelessly crowded, to the point that Jakarta consistently ranks as one of the world's worst cities for doing business in, as simply getting to your lunchtime meeting will involve you setting off at 5 a.m. 3 weeks earlier. In fact, Jakarta's overcrowding has gotten so bad that it's actually causing the city to subside. The sheer weight of all these houses, people and vehicles are causing parts of Jakarta to sink at a rate of 25 centimeters every year. That's faster than any city not affected by climate change or not built over a gigantic sinkhole. It's been estimated that saving Jakarta from a watery grave will cost at least $40 billion. On the other hand, if you can stand the noise, the pollution, the mess, the near daily protests, and the perma-gridlock, there is a lot to like about Jakarta. Expats lovingly talk about the city's energy, and it's hard to deny the whole conglomeration has a rugged charm. Number 9. Singapore, 10,200 people per square kilometer. Just a short hop away by plane from chaotic Jakarta, Singapore feels like a city from another planet. One of the world's only city-states, the others a tiny San Marino and the even tinier Vatican City, Singapore is clean, ordered, high-tech, and staggeringly prosperous. It has a world-leading financial center, a famous vertical forest, and a government so devoted to tidiness that it will publicly cane you for littering. Oh, and it manages all of this while being one of the densest cities on the face of the earth. Note that we didn't say overcrowded here. Singapore may have a population of 5.53 million, all crammed into an island of only 518 square kilometers, but it manages all those people with an efficiency that borders on the beautiful. For decades, housing has been tightly controlled by the Housing Development Board, which has covered the city with ultra-dense high-rises. While the projects in the US are a source of alienation, in Singapore they're just a fact of life. Around 80% of Singaporeans live in HDB apartments, and 90% of those own the apartment themselves. The result is a city that's ultra-dense, but also one of the most orderly places on Earth. The downside is that it's also insanely expensive for expats, especially compared to everywhere else on this list. Number 8. Abuja in Nigeria, 10,500 people per square kilometer. The story of Abuja is more than a little ironic. Designed from scratch in the 1970s as a roomy getaway from overcrowded, chaotic Lagos, the new Nigerian capital ultimately ended up going the way of its predecessor. 6 million people were sucked into a small strip of land designed for far, far fewer residents. The inevitable result? Well, a Euro-American-style city of sweeping boulevards, towering skyscrapers, and expensive mansions ringed by some of the most horrendous slums on the continent. It's those slums that make Abuja's ranking here. While the city proper is relatively prosperous and spacious, bar the chronic traffic jams that affect the whole of Nigeria, the capital's larger metro area is a brutal, stinking place where people are forced to live right on top of one another in substandard housing. Perhaps it's no wonder that an expat blog has called the city the glossy veneer the nation has haphazardly tried to use to cover its wounds. Still, we don't want to just spend this entry kicking Nigeria's capital. As an upside, the city is remarkably crime-free, something of an achievement in a country being torn apart by a radical Islamist insurgency. It's also got some stunning landmarks, even if you do have to squint to see them through the smog. Number 7. Kota in India, 12,100 people per square kilometer. Not far from the capital of Rajasthan, Jaipur, sits India's second most crowded city. Yep, we've got at least one more to go from India. Kota is way off the tourist trail, and that's for good reason. It's a sprawling industrial city that stretches along the river Chambal, and its major commodities are heavy industry and the sort of grittiness usually associated with Raymond Chandler novels. Population-wise, it's surprisingly small by Indian standards. A mere 1 million souls call this city home, yet the sheer amount of space given over to industrial architecture means that those who do live here are tightly crammed together. Perhaps one reason you never hear much about overcrowding in Qatar is because those being crowded into it are generally students. Qatar is the place for those cramming to pass India's ultra-competitive engineering and medical exams, and the city is full to overflowing with stressed-out students pulling 18-hour study shifts. So hardcore is it there that it has become a byword for burnout and even suicide in Rajasthan. Instead of advertisements, many street billboards sport pictures of successful students beaming down almost mockingly at the huddled masses below them. Why is it just us? Or does that sound less like a city and more like a setup for a dystopian YA novel? Number 6. Lagos, Nigeria. 13,300 people per square kilometer. And yes, we're back in Nigeria. With 182 million citizens, the West African nation is by far the most populous on the continent. And by far its most populous city is the insane metropolis of Lagos. A sprawling, creaking, groaning, whirling mass of people, cars, skyscrapers, slums, mosques, temples, madness and garbage. Lagos is like your average country dweller's nightmare vision of a city on steroids. The streets are gridlocked 24/7, both on the road and the sidewalk. There are rolling blackouts that last for days. Apartment blocks are so overcrowded that up to 50 people can share a single toilet and sink. We don't want to pass judgment here, but when you've got 50 people fighting to take a dump, you've got serious overcrowding problems. Then there's the crime. Lagos is so crime-ridden that it makes Gotham City look like the winner of Denmark's safest suburb. A US government report for 2017 said the dire economic conditions of most residents had led to a spate of armed muggings, assaults, burglaries, carjackings, rapes, kidnappings, and extortion aimed at foreigners, plus a staggering number of home invasions, even when that home was surrounded by guards. While all of the cities on our list have problems, we're willing to bet no others have them quite as bad as this city. Number 5. Casablanca in Morocco. 14,200 people per square kilometer. Known as the White City, Casablanca appears from afar like a glimmering jewel, a sculpture made of marble. Then you get closer and the whole illusion gives way to a writhing, pulsing, frantic mass of life scrabbling to cling on to the edges of Morocco's craziest port. Nearly 7 million people live here in a mess of traffic congestion and pollution so bad that by one count, it may be the 6th most polluted city in the world. Forget Humphrey Bogart telling Ingrid Bergman, "Here's looking at you, kid." In modern Casablanca, he likely wouldn't be able to find her through all the smog. Yet Casablanca is a city on the up. After decades of being overlooked as the dirty, ugly sister of Morocco's big cities, the famous port has reinvented itself as a 21st century Cinderella, by which we mean it's now becoming a booming tech capital. The city has even introduced a new smart traffic system to try and combat the mind-numbing congestion that has overwhelmed the streets for so long. Whether it works or not, well, that remains to be seen. Despite all of these improvements, the issue of Casablanca's overcrowding is unlikely to get any better. Like Abuja above, the city's main population problem stems from the grim, rundown slums snaking through its heart, where Morocco's urban poor live in squalid conditions. Number 4. Manila in the Philippines. 14,800 people per square kilometer. If you count just the city proper, i.e. not the extended metro area, Manila is the most overcrowded city on Earth. Even if you do as we're doing and measure the whole mess, it still comes in at 4th. 12.49 million people are squeezed into this super high-rise, super compact city, with another 8 million in the urban conglomeration surrounding it. Grinding poverty exists alongside unfeasible wealth, and it shows in the worst possible ways. The tales of overcrowding in Manila can sound like something from an earnest 1970s sci-fi novel. People with decent middle-class jobs live in tiny shacks under bridges, inches from railway lines, or even in unused crypts, so overcrowded and expensive is the Philippine capital. General maternity hospitals stack mothers and newborn babies up to 4 a bed just to ensure there is enough room. It's not unusual for a family of 8 to live in a 3x3 meter shack like they're stuck playing the longest, dullest game of sardines in the history of the world. Things have gotten so bad that local local journalists are sounding the alarm and calling the levels of overcrowding dangerous. Oh, and we're still getting started because we've still got 3 more cities to go. Number 3, Medellin in Colombia. 19,700 people per square kilometer. The only entry on our list that's neither in Asia or Africa, Medellin is Colombia's second largest city and erstwhile home of notorious douchebag Pablo Escobar. But while Medellin's 3.7 million residents are far short of the capital Bogota's 9.8 million citizens, Medellin is much more compact. Where Bogota sprawls for miles and miles in every direction, Medellin likes to keep its residents close. Interestingly, visiting both, Medellin actually feels less crowded than Bogota. While any trip to Bogota is just going to leave you with memories of traffic jams, streets thick with bodies, and a transport system that resolutely refuses to function, a trip to Medellin will probably leave you marveling at how comparatively orderly it is. Unlike its big brother, the city has a functioning metro system, is kept clean and tidy, and ticks over in a normal way. Even the city's slums are better than you'll find anywhere else in the region. While fighting in the slums once made Medellin the world's murder capital, today the rundown streets are the focus of a massive regeneration project that is making it safer, richer, and more connected. Number 2, Mumbai, India. 31,700 people per square kilometer. Now we get on to the really crowded cities. Mumbai's large metro area has a population of 20.7 million, as much as Greater Manila and Greater Detroit combined. Only they're in a much smaller area. No prizes for guessing how this has turned out. Mumbai is so jam-packed with humans that it makes ultra-dense Manila feel like the remotest part of Alaska. To give just a hint of the levels of crowding on display, figures released in 2014 found that nearly 800 people a year die after falling from Mumbai's trains. The reason they fall? Well, the carriages are so full that they physically get pushed out of the open doors. So what else is there? Well, there's that time the state government decided to ease overcrowding by building a whole new city. Navi Mumbai used to house new arrivals. Navi Mumbai filled up so fast that within 20 years the government was forced to start building a second overflow city to cope with all the people. There's also the crippling traffic jams. A short drive from the centre to the airport routinely takes upwards of 2 hours. The government is worried that if things continue, they soon won't be able to provide sanitation, jobs, or even food for everyone in the city. The trouble is that Mumbai was built on a series of islands, and expansion is therefore a hugely costly and time-consuming endeavour. On the other hand, leaving things as they are clearly isn't an option either. Number 1, Dhaka, Bangladesh. 44,500 people per square kilometer. And then there's Dhaka. The capital of Bangladesh is an unbelievable urban sprawl with 70 million lost souls crammed into its metropolitan area. The operative word here is crammed. Dhaka's overcrowding is so abysmally intense that it frequently comes second to last in the quality of life indices. Only highly unstable Caracas in Venezuela fares worse among cities not actually in a war zone. It doesn't help that Bangladesh is abysmally poor. The entire country is hugely underfunded, while even the simplest things cost far above market rates due to rampant corruption. In Dhaka, that means there is no public transport, no infrastructure projects, few ways to police this insane overcrowding, and almost nothing can be done. Infamously, this can be seen in Dhaka's traffic jams, which are more or less eternal. Except during major strikes, Dhaka's streets are always gridlocked. The city may never sleep, but it also never moves. And all of this is before we get on to the slums. Traffic and poverty are bad in India, but in Dhaka they reach the apex. So many humans living in such miserable conditions so close to each other is surely something that God never intended for this great green earth. Yet, here we are. Migrants come from all over Bangladesh looking to make their living in the most overcrowded city in the world. Maybe next time the rest of us get stuck in traffic, we can think of all the poor souls in this city and put our moaning in perspective. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also over there on the right, a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.